Hello, everybody. This is Wendy and Mikey with eBay Scavengers, a podcast for learning to turn trash to cash. So today we're going to talk first about what happened in our store this week. Mikey, how was your week?
Well, we had a pretty awesome week. In fact, this might be one of our best weeks ever. We sold over $3,600 in stuff, and that does not include the shipping price. So this is the best week I think we've had this year that I can remember.
Yes, but I would say there are two contributing forces. One is we're entering Christmas buying season, holiday buying season. Mm-hmm. And the other is we had an item that sold for $3,000. Right. So, that's a biggie.
Yeah. So the item that sold was a head-mounted video display. And it's a newer type of item, and it was something we had bought recently, and I just wasn't into it, so we basically doubled our money in a week on the item. So that was cool.
Yeah, and I think there's also something to be said for that, which is when you're dealing with new technology, which this is, you're in a situation where you can hold out and try and get like the top dollar people are getting on eBay, but we chose not to do that because it's so new that the price is jumping around, and as more hit the market, you can the value actually goes down. So we just chose to not be greedy and take a reasonable offer, and again, we doubled our money. We got back what we paid for it plus the same amount in profit.
So I also think this is a good weekend just because we're falling in after a pay cycle at the beginning of the month. So usually there's 2 weekends a month we do pretty well on. Anyway, one of the things that was awesome about this weekend is we went out to yard sales. Not so unusual for us to go to yard sales, but there were like 20. There were so many yard sales. I had a spreadsheet that we went out with just to kind of track them all. And we had a discussion the night before of which ones to go to. And as soon as we came home, we started listing.
Yeah, one of the great things we do often, not always, but we did it this week, is we got home, we listed everything we bought. That is a perfect eBay seller situation.
And it's a lot of fun if you go out on a Friday morning, because what will happen is all Friday evening and then Sunday again it'll happen. It just ding, ding, ding. Your phone's going crazy with sales.
And we already sold quite a few things that we bought just the other day. So that was great.
Right. And I think as always, when you're listing, eBay tends to have other things start moving. So we're selling a lot of older items.
And one of the reasons I think we had a lot of fun listing this week and we were able to list so many things is we did something unusual. We had
we did a Goggle Hangout with some of our other eBay friends. So there were 3 of us. One was in Amsterdam, one was in Massachusetts, and then another one was us here in New Mexico.
Yeah, so that was super fun because we're old friends. We used to live near each other, some of us, and now we don't. But we all have eBay stores, and we're very connected about the eBay stores. So this was like all of us hanging out in our living rooms, listing together, and also sharing a lot of information. And in our case, the sharing of information was really valuable because Ryan actually, by seeing what we were doing, noticed something. So why don't you tell them about that?
Right. So Ryan was looking at some of our listings as we were talking and showing each other what we had. And she said, you have subtitles turned on. So on
Garage Sale, which is an app we use to list.
Right. But Ryan could see it inside of eBay. So our last 100 listings had subtitles on them. And but
we don't use subtitles, so we left the field blank. But the opportunity to put a subtitle was activated.
Right. So it just said subtitle instead of any usable text for us. So what happens is eBay charges you $1.50 per listing. So we're used to paying 10 cents a listing. Now all of a sudden we're paying $1.50 per listing because of this issue. And we looked back in our history and noticed this goes back to July, these $1.50 inserts. So we had something like $450 in that range of fees, and they haven't even processed this month yet, but there'll be more once they do.
Basically everything that I listed, because it was just on my version of Garage Sale that it was ticked on. Yeah. So anyway, the upside of this, so this was hundreds of dollars in fees that we didn't even realize we were paying until Ryan caught it through our virtual meeting. And so right away, Mikey got on the phone with eBay, and really you had a delightful experience.
Yeah, I always have good calls with eBay. They are helpful and want to be helpful. So It's not resolved yet, but as soon as I called in, they're like, no problem. We will get these fees refunded to you. I can see that this was a mistake and you weren't gaining anything from the word subtitle being present on your listings. So we're still working it out with eBay because it's going to take them a while to review each of the $1.50 insertions and cut us a check. So I think we'll get that resolved today. We'll call back in and follow up.
But that was a really good ending to a slightly dramatic moment.
I want to mention a shipping thing. We had 2 international packages going out. We had one to Russia and one to Israel. And I noticed a couple of problems with the insurance. So one was to Russia, I wanted to send an insured package, priority mail. And fortunately, eBay lets you print priority mail to Russia now. They had that turned off for a long time due to some weird scam that was going on. But they won't let you insure anything to Russia. Not through ShipCover, not through USPS. You just can't insure it. So that kind of sucks. I don't know a great way around that right now.
And this was a high dollar value.
It's like $150. Yeah.
Now, my answer to that is to tell the seller, I'm willing to ship to you in Russia, but please know I don't have an option to insure it. So, it's your risk, not mine. If you accept that, I will still ship it.
Right. Now, the reason I wasn't that concerned about the insurance is because it's a priority mail to Russia, which means we have full tracking. And what that means is if the buyer has any issue, all we have to do is point to the tracking number and say, look, it's shipped.
Yeah,
Here's the tracking.
It left the country.
Yeah, well, and it's got full tracking means PayPal will not refund the buyer, and it means eBay will not side with the buyer. So even without insurance, they cannot get their money back through those systems. So the other thing that happened is I wanted to print an express mail, like a sort of overnight, super fast USPS mail to Israel, and can't do it through eBay. So I had to go through a stamps.com and print the express mail shipping label and insure it through stamps.com. It ended up being about $100, but this was for our $3,000 headset, so it's well worth it to have the insurance and this super fast delivery. Express mail actually isn't that much more when you're talking about items on the multi-thousand level.
I just want to return for a moment to our online hangout session where we were listing with our friends. A couple of other things that were really useful about that was we were able to show each other objects and say, what do you think of this? How much would you sell this for? Look at this weird label. The other thing that happened is we use Terapeak and Libby doesn't. So we were able to say, hey, Libby, give me that data again. I'll throw it on Terapeak and give her some information that she wasn't able to obtain herself. So in addition to being fun, it was really useful.
Yeah, and one thing I would recommend if other eBayers have friends they eBay with and want to try the Google Hangout thing, it's really cool to do the screen share where someone can just watch you list. Because I was listing in Garage Sale and Ryan could watch me do it. She's not a Garage Sale user, so she could just see
what
the
it's
process.
Like, yeah.
And it's kind of cool to watch people list because you can see how they move around, what
their shortcuts are.
Yeah, how long it takes them to get an item up. And there's all these tips because Libby was a Garage Sale user and immediately I could point her to a little hack in Garage Sale where you can rapidly list items that are kind of new in box that have existing templates that Garage Sale already knows about. So there's a lot of advantages, and I think we're looking forward to doing the Hangout again soon because that was really beneficial for everybody.
I hope we do it every week. And actually, one of the funnier moments on the Hangout was taking our laptops to where we store our eBay merchandise and showing each other the crazy storage rooms, which they all looked the same. I couldn't even tell theirs from ours. They were so similar.
So you, Wendy, had a great sale this week on an item that was I think a 10-cent book you bought at a yard sale.
Oh, yeah. So, this holiday stuff is funny. I bought for 10 cents a book of Halloween cutouts for the windows. And I think it goes back to about the 1940s, this book, and it was intact and pretty good shape, and all the cutouts were, fine and not popped out of the pages. So I bought it for a dime, and last year I found, after buying it, that someone had sold one like it for about $70. And so I went for it. I listed it for $70, and I didn't get it, and Halloween passed. So I sat on it for a year, which was no big deal. It's a tiny, skinny little book. But Halloween's coming up, and this year someone gave me a reasonable buy it now of $40. So I just I just let it go. I sold it. I accepted. And I was just delighted, really, to sell something that I bought for a dime for $40, even if I waited a year because it was small.
I'm glad that book moved like that. And like you said, it's so small. No big deal to wait it out. Those are some of my favorite items, the things that are free or 10 cents. They're just the most fun.
I know.
So I want to talk about a return we had this week. It wasn't a complex return or anything, but it was an interesting mistake on our part. Someone bought a little silver gravy boat from us, right?
Stainless steel, wood handles, I think made in Japan. They're kind of common, and we pick them up even though they're not a big flip. They usually go for like $30, $35, which is really the bulk of our business, actually. So we grab them if they're $1 or less, and we didn't know we had 2 different ones that were very similar but still different.
Right, and the person who received the gravy boat was like, hey, this isn't the one I bought. This was made somewhere else. This was, not the exact model, even though the dimensions and the look are very similar. So I'm like, no problem, send it back. And we did. We refunded them, and it's resolved.
What was weird was they didn't want the one they originally ordered. They just said, nah, I don't want anything. But I think they just bailed on an order is all. Could
have been. I don't know. Anyway, they were fine. I refunded their money the other day when it arrived back. And they said thank you, gave us good feedback. So, it was not a big deal, but interesting mistake on our part when you have 2 items and don't know it,
Yeah. And I think you guys know, because we've been talking about it over the last few podcasts, that Mikey and I, after starting our store almost a year ago, I guess, we got smarter and started carrying smaller and smaller items. Now we're just all about, what fits in a padded flat rate envelope. Anyway, so, but we do still have some big items, and we used to do some real construction type of work on our home, and we bought some tools, and so we're trying to clear out the shed and get rid of some big, heavy, bulky items. The problem I run into with that is so often I have to make custom boxes for things. So just today, actually, I made 2 custom boxes, one for a paper cutter and one for a giant floor stapler. And, I don't mind doing it so much. I'm actually getting really good at it, but it takes time and it's a pain. So I am the custom box maker. And, just if you're in that predicament yourself and you don't have a box, it's not so tough to cut down a box. I always start by just using the cardboard as paper, and I wrap an object in it, and then I start to cut folds and make it look like a box so the post office won't give it back to me.
I think that covers this week for us.
Yeah, it was a good week. Again, we had a couple of big sale items. Where are we? We're the first week in October, coming to an end now, and this is it, folks. This is your retail buying season for the year. So if you're sitting on stacks of stuff that you haven't listed,
start listing.
We have a stack ourselves. I think the week coming ahead of us is going to be focused entirely on listing.
So we have another episode, which is a really interesting one. We are going to interview Wendy's mother today.
Yes, we are. My mom's in her 80s, and she's been around, and she used to be an antique collector, and she was pretty good at it. I grew up with a house full of dusty antiques. She's older now, and she no longer lives in New York, where there was a lot of high-dollar items. She's in Albuquerque now, and she doesn't have very much money. She's living on Social Security, so she's gotten really thrifty. And instead of antiques, she's become a real Scavengers at thrift. And her approach is interesting. She volunteers. And, she volunteers to do a lot of things, not just thrift. But this one's particularly interesting because really her entire house is furnished and decorated with thrift. Everything she wears comes from thrift. She comes to our house with things she found for us, Afghans, kitchen gadgets, and she's good at it. So, she's really out of date. If she had any eBay skills, she'd probably be a killer eBay seller, but she actually does not even know how to turn on a computer. We're going to talk to her soon. It's going to be a lot of fun. She's a really funny lady, and we hope you enjoy it. So thanks for being with us on episode 55 of eBay Scavengers.